Hey, aloha mai kako. So let us bow our heads in prayer. Pule kako. Disturb us, Lord, when we are too pleased with ourselves, when our dreams have come true because we dreamed too little, when we arrive safely because we sailed too close to the shore. Disturb us, Lord, when with the abundance of things we possess, we have lost our thirst for the waters of life. Having fallen in love with life, we have ceased to dream of eternity, and in our efforts to build a new earth, we have allowed our vision of the new heaven to dim. Disturb us, Lord, to dare more boldly, to venture on wilder seas where storms will show your mastery, where losing sight of land, we shall find the stars. We ask you to push back the horizons of our hopes and to push back the future in strength, courage, hope, and love. This we ask in the name of our captain, who is Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. This prayer was composed by Sir Francis Drake. You see him over here. And he started out as a pirate, and he was later knighted by the Queen. He said this prayer as he departed Plymouth on the ship Golden Hind to raid Spanish gold on the west coast of South America. And he returned to his queen with loot worth over £500,000 of sterling silver. So what I want to say, if Sir Francis can go from a pirate to a knight, to be knighted by the Queen, I look around, see all these pirates in the room, I think there's hope for all of them. Okay. So my topic today is Malama Akua, caring for the gods. Probably ask what gives him the qualifications to talk on this subject. And actually, there is nothing. I have nothing except that for many of you who came to my ordination, you do know that I am a licensed priest. I'm not as popular as the pseudo priest named Kahiko Kapchoi, who's now going to be doing his second marriage, but you know, I eventually hope to get there. I'm a priest in the Anglican Church. It's actually the Episcopal Church in the United States. The larger name is the Anglican Communion at St. John's by the Sea. Many of you came to my ordination and found that it was a blast. We Episcopalians, like the Lutherans, were the only ones that opposed prohibition in the 30s. So we had a good time. Our church has two good things. One is it has a great history with indigenous people. We're the only church that was invited by royalty, by our Hawaiian leaders, to come and minister to the people here in Hawaii. So in 1860 actually, King Kamehameha IV, Alexander Liholiho, and his wife Queen Emma sent a formal invitation to the See of Canterbury, which is our equivalent of the Vatican, which is in England, asking them to come and minister to the people. They actually specifically wanted to baptize their son, Kahakuo Hawaii. Things did not work out. The prince died in September of 1862. They arrived. The bishop arrived in October of 1862. Pretty sad occasion, but they ended up nonetheless confirming both King Kamehameha IV and Emma in the church. You can't be baptized, you only get baptized once, but you get confirmed. So they moved from the Protestant church, which had always been the Church of the Ali'i, to the new Episcopal Church. This is a picture of the bishop that came. He's the Right Reverend Thomas Nettleship Staley, and he was brought over, and he served as the first bishop. Let's see. So we have a great history. We haven't done that good a job of keeping our Hawaiian roots. We kind of reflect on them, but this is just an editorializing. We we haven't done a very good job in reaching out to Indigenous people in recent years, but you know, it's a work in progress. So that's great. We have great history. We also have a connection with Lua because once Kamehameha IV, he is arguably one of the first Hawaiian Christian kings. He declared Christmas, where before the Puritan Congregationists didn't want to celebrate anything having to do with Christmas or tied to England, and so they did something like Thanksgiving Day. Anyway, he changed it and he brought back Christmas. He was a son of Matayo, who is Kekuanoa, who is in our genealogy, in our Lua genealogy. When he became confirmed, it was almost like a trend of all the royalty. So everybody subsequent to that moved over to the Anglican Church in Hawaii. So you have King Kalakaua. You all know him for establishing, most notably, our Lua school, and then of course the first graduate, Kuhio Kalaniana Ole, who was also confirmed in the church and was also, these were all very active in the Anglican Church. John Papa'i'i, I bring him down here too, also because a great warrior, and he also was confirmed in the church. So we have a very good history for them. I'm not going to talk about theology that much, but I do want to show you two people that there are others, but these two have inspired me in ways of developing my theology. This picture is of a man named Harry Kunihi Mitchell. And for those of you who were active in Protect Kaho'olawe Ohana days, his son, Kimo Mitchell, and George Helm were lost at sea. He became he rose up to be one of the more prominent elders in the movement. He also was one of our elders that we relied on when we restored the lo'i back in the 80s at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, which is now operates as Kapapa Lo'i Kaniwai. Person on my far right is, many of you know, Earl Kawa'a. Many of you have experienced him through the Board and Stone. And we did the build the wall in 7 days. Actually, we built it in 1 day. But we did both the board and the stone in a phenomenal time that he has never ever, I think, repeated for other people. But he said, "I'm doing it because you guys are in Lua. You guys can do it." So we did it, and we had a lot of fun. But I bring these two men into the conversation because it had to do with worshiping of the gods and of what they call the old religion. For them, it was a very restrictive practice, which their ancestors practiced. In fact, they grew up in a time when many of our Hawaiians were still worshiping the old gods. Now, the major gods maybe had gone away, but the personal gods, and when the religion went underground, they were still doing the practice. But even those practices ceased, and they did not pass them down. And they were very clear on that. And there's almost like a theme running through both of these men when they tell us that. They said it was so restrictive that we don't imagine today what the restrictions were. We think that we could just, leave an offering here or say a prayer here, and I got to go pick up my kids, and we are not really plugged into what it was really like. It was a very strict observance. It was very ritualistic, and it was continuous. And you did not get a break today, as McDonald's would say. And so what they said is that their ancestors said, the ways of the old have gone. We want you to now move forward. And for them, it was observing a higher power. But this time, they were very clear that it was Christian and it was not the old ways. now that's where my theology comes from, and because I'm a priest, it doesn't mean that I do not respect, I do not honor the gods of old, and do not pay homage to them, but I don't worship them. So there's a clear distinction in that for me. So I just want to let you know that. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. Now, I have this cartoon over here because I don't believe I've ever seen an indigenous atheist. Okay, I believe there's always. I believe that as indigenous people, this is in our DNA. We believe in a higher power. We always believe in that. And so, whether you are Christian, whether you are Buddhist, whether you still do worship the old gods, that's where this becomes relevant. You don't believe in the higher power, then all what you're doing is kind of mumbo jumbo. Okay, so you need that connection to the divine, and that is going to be the condition for malaming akua, because akua means God. And if there is no God in your life, awe. Okay, next. Our elders of old were very wise, wonderful, brilliant people. They were very tuned in, and you'll hear some of the subsequent speakers. They're very tuned into what goes around in nature. They could heal. They could forecast. They could predict. They were amazing people. The kahuna of old did ceremonies on huge structures called heiau. And people know that. And from our teachings from Pakuiolo, Alohe Mitchell Eli talks about heiau as being a contraction of hei and au. Hei is to ensnare or to encircle, to ensnare, and au is a current. And so these temples were areas where they would communicate with the gods. They would harness the energy from the gods in order to do what they were supposed to do. You can see this is a picture of Pu'ukohola on one side. The other two, these are our heiau at Kamehameha's heiau at Keauhou. I think one is Hapaiali'i and the other one is Ke'eku. But you can see these aren't, and they come in all different sizes. The bigger they are, the more massive the structure, the bigger the God that they were praying to. In church, if you go to some of these Gothic churches and you see just the beautiful artwork, that goes on in some of these churches, you see, wow, this is really elaborate. And why did they do this? This is a place where the divine lives. And that's the whole object for all of this. That's why the temples were huge. This is the place where you were going to communicate with the divine. And if it was a grand akua, you need to have a grand landing pad or taking off pad. These were the portals. Yeah. Okay. So we're not going to talk about theology. We're not going to get into all this. We're just going to talk about sacred space very quickly. Sacred space. And there are some things that we observe when we get into sacred space. You've seen it with our Maori friends. They call it a pofiti. This is their, and you've seen, for those of you who went down to Aotearoa and how quickly those sacred spaces can be assembled. It's very, and in Lua that, when you're ready to go, you flip on the mana switch, you flip off the switch. You guys know all about that, so I don't need to get into that. But we need to think about that when we are creating sacred space, when we worship, when we pule to akua. And there are many different types not many different types, but these are kind of the elements that we want to look at when we're creating sacred space. So the first is ritual protocols. Oloi Kapio, for those who are in our La'au class, has made a distinguish between ritual and protocol. So he says ritual is when you're honoring a higher source, which is the divine, Keapua. Protocols, you're honoring someone who has come from afar, say a guest, but you're honoring humanity. And we do this because we need to not only honor our gods, but we honor each other. Yeah, we come from. So we have ritual, we have protocol. We're going to be talking more about ritual in the front, as we're talking more about our establishing sacred spaces with Kekua. Another important point, along with the ritual, our Pule, prayer. We'll talk a little bit about that, because for those of you who are in Earl Kava'a's Word and Stone class, we learned the structure of Pule. So I may call on some of you to just kind of shout out a sentence or two. And then, of course, sacraments. Sacraments are the things that you use in order to do your communication, to make things sacred. It's interesting, the Maoris have a word, they separate prayer and sacraments. So their word for Pule is karakia, and the word for sacraments is Pule. So they separate the two out. With Hawaiians, we just say Pule is Pule. They can be with and without sacraments. These are some of the things that you need to remember. So we're not going to get into basically a how-to, but just things to keep in mind so that even you can stay Pule or communicate with Kekua. The first is be intentional. This is so critical, and you folks know that. You've heard this been lectured throughout Lua. Know why you do what you do. Why are you doing this? Okay. If you're going to go to a ceremony with red tea leaf, why are you carrying red tea leaf? Okay, and not green tea leaf? Know that rationale behind that. There's some basis for what you're doing, and that it's hopefully based in Hawaiian culture. Be genuine and sincere. When you're praying to the gods, this is not a time to be silly or foolish. It can be a performance, but it is carried out with all the due respect that it deserves. Use the sacred elements properly. Consecrate them. Consecrating means that you do something as simple as washing it. For 48, they want the tea leaf, all the dirt gets taken out of that. Why? Because that's all part of the ceremony. Okay. And finally, be aware and receptive to Keakua's response. As you are praying, as you are communicating, look for signs. It may be something as simple as the wind blow, or a light rain, or rainbow, or it may be a pule. It may be something happening at that moment. Coincidence? I think not. Okay. Oloikapi'o talks about this, and we're going to put this in the context of Pule, is ho'oponopono. Ho'oponopono is to purify yourself, to cleanse yourself, because in order for you to give up energy, in order for you to do your best, you need to get rid of what Oloikapi'o calls the opala that's inside of you, okay? It can be distractions, you're having a bad day, negative mana, somebody, you had a fight with your girlfriend or your wife, never but your girlfriend. And you just, you're down and out, and now you got to pull it to Kekua. How's that going to look? And that's not going to be your first and foremost strong. So you want to, and we have two cleanses. We have a mai loko mai, what Alohi refers to that is from within. You're cleansing yourself, the sickness from within the body. And this he's recommended. We just did hemu to do as a cleansing. He's also suggested other things that you can use. Kalahikiku, in Lua know that. Now Makua, we're going to be practicing that more. And the Aloha chant. So we have some things to play around with. So if you know these and you want to practice on your own, keep doing that. But these are good points. The other one is mai waho mai, and it's the sickness or the opala that's outside and comes to bombard you from outside and attaches to you. Could be spirits, it could be all these negative mana energy. So to do that, Oloikapi'o has and this is all you see Pikai, We use that in our Ava ceremony. We use that in our 48. Other groups do what's called kapukai. Kapukai is going into the ocean and doing that same kind of cleansing ritual. But this is all, so you are set. Christians, we call it centering prayer, which is like maybe 20 minutes of meditation on one thing, so that you're ready and you're focused to do a good job. When you do Pule, again, it goes back to being intentional. But you can say words, you can speak those words, you can chant them. That's what an oli is. When you hear the oli going, it's a chant. In Christian, when we do, the Lord be with you, that's a chant. How about that? So we're on the same. That's right. Or you can sing it. We sing songs in honor of people. We also can sing songs in honor of gods. The Mahalo chant that Oloitopio is going to be teaching us, it says Mahalo e na akua. So that's giving thanks for the gods. I have to tell you, at Kamehameha, the Christian Kahu got very upset and says, no, it's Mahalo ke akua, because there's only one God. And so everybody had to put the brakes on that. And I was their legal counsel, and I said, yeah, what's wrong with that? Come on, lighten up. Whatever. Okay, so spoken, chanted, however you want to deliver it, make sure you're doing a good job on that. It can be in Hawaiian, it can be in English, okay? In Hawaiian, in English, whatever you do, choose your words carefully. Okay, Hawaiians have a saying, "Oka olelo, no keola, oka olelo, no kamake." In language, there is life, and in language, there is death. What that means is, if you do not choose correctly, things can come back to you. So it's just a warning to say, so some of these old chants that you find in the book, we use them, but those are used for specific purposes. And what I don't want you to do is go, oh yeah, I found this chant online, so I'm gonna chant it out there. That's like taking a loaded firearm and giving it, to a child. You don't know what you're chanting. You can be calling them, but if they respond, make sure you know what you're gonna do. So Hawaiian or English, choose those words carefully. Like practice, the better you get, the better communication skills you will be with Kepua. And the complexity corresponds to the actual event, the importance of the event. Simple event, you don't need to go into this grand, ceremony when it can be something simple. Okay. Structure for Pule. It's a very simple structure. When you say, God, when I pray, how do I pray? I don't know how to do this. Okay, here it is. Basically, you have 4 or 5 things. Some of them, if you notice in Pule, some of them are combined. So we'll just start really quickly. We'll go out, and I'm going to call out on my brothers who went to the board and stone to give me some examples. So glorification, ho'onani. Yeah, ho'onani kamakua mo. Great, sing that. Ho'onani means glorification. What do we say? What's an opening line?
Thanks be to God.
Thanks be to God.
Co-creator of light, creator of darkness.
Creator of light and darkness. Heavenly and gracious Father. Eke akua. Something simple like that. Okay. Forgiveness. Usually we use this. It can be combined sometimes with thankfulness. What's an example of forgiveness?
Forgive us of our sins.
Heavenly and gracious Father, or Heavenly and gracious Keakua, forgive us of our sins. We strayed off the path of righteousness. You in your mercy and your love bring us back on. That kind of stuff. It's very simple. Thankfulness, ho'omaikai. Somebody.
Thankful to gather and beautify you with our wonderful friends.
We thank, through that mouth, does everybody get that? We thank you for the wonderful gathering with all of our friends.
Forgot to brush his teeth.
Anybody else? Thank you for our friends who are gathered here today. We thank you for a beautiful day that you have given us. We're thankful for it. We're surrounded by so many friends that love you, care for you. And then finally, we wrap it up with, all right, you buttered me up. Now what do you want? Okay. Request. Request, anybody? Olu. What about an ask? Yes.
I was just thinking about what you're saying up there.
Pule has remarkable uses and remarkable effects. So a good one, ask you to bless this food. Ask you to, give comfort to those who are in need. We ask you to protect us as we go on this journey. We ask for health and strength, in this time of need.
Ask our Lord to not have an election week.
Yes, we can even do that, Kanui. We ask for more Republican voters from Pennsylvania to come out. And then finally, the closing, very simple. We ask this in your name. Amen. Okay. So that is kind of the basic structure. Go home, write it out, and practice it. Because this is, you'll never know from our alohe when you'll be called on to say Pule. Like, okay. Can be used in a variety of situations. Yeah. Ho'oponopono is a very, very good example. Mannerisms. We're gonna talk briefly about how to when you're Pule or you're doing a request. Some people look down. Yeah, the Christian prayers, we look down. This is a sign of reverence. Don Ho used to say, we look down, and then when we look back up, all the missionaries took our land. So if you're like Charles Ken, the smart ones, you're looking up, keeping alert, keeping vigilant. Charles Ken, it was told to us that when he would pray, he would look up and he would be asking for guys from Cape Cool with his hands up, looking up. See another picture of a Native American looking up to the sky. So that is another way of praying, or you can. Hand gestures. Hawaiians, interestingly, believe that putting, clasping your hands behind your back and putting them in front is not good. And so I'm saying I would encourage you folks to to don't get too hung up with this, but the hands in front, they say when the hands are crossed in front, it's a sign of impudence. I don't care what you have to say. When the hands are placed behind the back, in the Pukui Elber Dictionary, it says this is called opea kua. You've heard of opea, funny, yeah? Funny. This is called opea kua, and it's a gesture considered rude because it was thought to bring bad luck to a fisherman or one beginning a venture. It signified, may your disappointment be so great as to weigh down your back. So just keep that in mind. I prefer just to put my hands at the side, when we're chanting or when we're doing something. Or if you have to, if you're doing it in Hawaiian, a good example is the chant Ealae when the sun comes up. Ealae kala ikahikina, pointing in the east. Ikamoana, kamoana ho honu, pi kaleva, kaleva iluna. You're moving towards you're describing what's going on. Okay, that's a good example. If you want to use your hands gesture, but usually that's only when you're the leader. But other people have a different take. It's sort of whatever floats your boat. So if you feel moved by the Spirit to do that, go ahead and do it. And people have different things. Yes.
What about holding hands in a circle like that?
So that, there's nothing wrong with that. People refer to it as a circle. A lot of times indigenous people will gather together in a circle, sacred circle. Holding hands is fine. Traditionally, I think that's more, it's more of a modern take on it. The late Reverend Darrell Iona, who was one of our priests in the Episcopal Church, his father was a very spiritual man, and we used to get together because that's what we used to do with Kaolave, all these other gatherings. We gather in a circle in Pule, holy hands, and he used to always mockingly say, "Oh, look at us getting together, holding hands in a circle." And I go, "I guess you didn't do that when you were growing up in your days, Karu." But so there's nothing bad with that. But I think it's more of a modern gathering. Really quickly, talking about our sacred elements that we use. These are the things that we do to use to communicate importance to Keakua. You know about Waihua, the coconut, stage 4. We have the water from the Kaloli spring water. And then, of course, our Pa'akai, La'i, and Olena. For those of you who are already in Lua, you know about this. When we do a 48, do the office ceremony, these are all things to consecrate and to purify not only the items, but also us. And finally, of course, this is probably one of our most important ceremonies, which is Ava. And this just the cultural and religious significance of this dictates a ceremony, a formal ceremony for us. Our use of Ava differs from the rest of Polynesia. I'll just say this in the sense that it was reserved for the chiefs, usually used by them for ceremonial occasions. Wasn't as much used for recreational use as it is in Tonga and Samoa and other places of Polynesia. So, but many of you do know all the protocols. If you're involved in La'au and also in Lua, you know or you follow many of these protocols. Okay. So to sum up, be intentional, know why you do what you do, continue to maintain your relationship and practice regularly. So good thing is pull it before you eat. That's a nice way of keeping in shape, practicing. The more you do it, the better you get. And you draw your strength not only from the crowd or the people that you have, you also honor Keakua in this earthly life to make you a stronger person. Okay. Okay, maunina o ka'uko. Does anyone have any questions? Or as my good friend Kapahua used to say when Vince said, "Do you have any Christians?" He asked me, "Are we Christians?" Does he ask if there's any Christians here? And I said, "Yes, raise your hand." So, yes, Steve. Good question.
Two questions. Is there an established protocol for erecting an ahu? And second question, and more importantly, what does the F in your middle name stand for?
So I'll answer the first one. I'll answer if you say it really fast, it's F and Lucas. So, but that's we'll reserve that for. It means fun, actually. But in answer to your first one, are there protocols for consecrating an ahu?
Yes.
Yeah. And so you can talk to many people and they will say, yes, there are. And so a good example is the Kanaka Ole Foundation. They have protocols. And I'm not sure about exactly what that means. it's once I've seen ahu when they are created, like the one that we constructed for Iolani Palace in 1993. I think there was a lot of ceremony, there was a lot of pomp and pageantry in it. We all brought rocks, all pohaku from the different islands, and we put it together. But after that, I didn't see a lot of malama akua there, and so I'm not sure what it is. Is it a Uncle Harry used to say, is it a koa or it is a kula? They're two different purposes, and some people were worshiping something that was a koa, which is just a marker, a boundary marker or a certain marker, versus a kuula, which was the shrine that you prayed for fishing. So there are, and but I will defer that to the Kanaka Olu Foundation and others who are more knowledgeable about that. Anything else? If not, mahalo nui. Thank you very much.